And just like that, we're at the end of the war. So this lecture is on how the war ended and what happened after the war. And a lot of this information will set the stage for World War II. So keep it all in the back of your mind as we go through our next couple units before we get to World War II. Don't forget how to watch a flipped video. Step 1, watch this video one time through without looking at your notes. Step 2, now look at your notes and see if you can fill any in without watching again. And then step 3, watch again and pause as you go through. This will really help you to learn this material. Remember, these lessons are how you get your notes, and you need to have them completed in class, and you need to know this information for the test. So after 4 long years of war, President Wilson develops his 14-point plan for peace. And we're going to look at several of those 14 points in class this week. Wilson and the European allies had very different opinions on what should take place when the war ended. France wanted something different than the U.S. Great Britain was more on the side of France, and let's see what happened. So Wilson's 14 points was a peace plan prepared by the U.S. President Woodrow Wilson at the end of World War I. And it called for the formation of the League of Nations. And this is a definition you need to complete on your homework. The peace talks take place at a French palace called Versailles. This is a very famous palace in France. It's very large, very elegant, and historically it was the seat of French power. President Wilson and his European counterparts had different opinions on how to establish the peace, and they were called the Big Three. Okay, so you can see their pictures there below. You have the leader of Great Britain, the U.S., and France. So Wilson believed that peace should be created without putting blame on any one country. But the European allies believed that the Germans needed to be punished. They blamed them for the war and how everything went down. And so President Wilson is coming in with a totally different view of what should happen after the war ended than the European allies. What actually goes into the treaty, you can see here at the bottom, what is in the treaty is that Germany must take full responsibility for the war. So President Wilson did not get his way on this treaty, on this part of the treaty. The next part of the treaty made the decision, should Germany pay for the war? President Wilson says Germany should not pay harsh reparations. Reparations are payments made by the loser in the war to the winners. However, the European allies said Germany should pay the allies for the whole war. Whatever the cost was, Germany needs to pay for it. Again, Wilson loses out to the European allies here, and Germany has to pay billions of dollars in reparations to the allies for the war. For World War I, Germany has to pay. So you can start to see, put yourself in Germany's shoes. How does Germany feel about these parts of the peace treaty? Okay, not too good. So you can kind of see here, the seeds are already being planted for World War II. What happened to the empires that lost the war? So think back to Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, they lose. What happens to their lands? President Wilson says nations, ethnic groups need to decide for themselves what country they want to be. So they can vote, they can pick what country do they want to be. Think back to how it started with that piece of Austria-Hungary wanting to be part of Serbia. Wilson says if they want to be part of Serbia, let them be part of Serbia. If they want to be their own country, let them be their own country. But the European allies say Central powers should lose the land control of foreign countries and give up all of their territories. No voting, they lose everything. In the peace treaty, new countries are formed, such as Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia. These are created from the former lands of Germany and Austria-Hungary. Take a look at the map. Compare this with your original map. You can see Germany is much smaller. Austria-Hungary is no longer even one country, it's two, plus there's these other countries taken out of it, and the Ottoman Empire becomes Turkey, and its lands are broken up as well. So Europe after World War I looks a little bit more similar to Europe today, but again, the map changes throughout the 20th century, and we will continue to discuss that. But if you get a moment, take a second and compare this map with the map that we did of 1914 Europe. The 14th point, the last one of Wilson's 14 points, was that Wilson believed a League of Nations, a league is a group, which would be a peacekeeping organization, should be formed. The European allies could fall into line with this, and they said, yes, an organization should be formed to help nations solve their differences before starting a world war, because none of these countries wanted this to happen again. World War I was called the Great War and the war to end all wars. They really believed there would not be another one. What's in this peace treaty? The League of Nations was added to the Treaty of Versailles, so here you can see Wilson got something pushed through. This treaty was signed by the winners of the war in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles. So you can see this is the picture of the Hall of Mirrors in Versailles. It looks like this. It has mirrors on one side and windows on the other, designed to make the room look very bright and beautiful and large. So this is where the treaty is signed. And here's a picture of the leaders of the winning countries signing the treaty. They did not ask the losing countries to agree to this treaty, which also causes a future problem. Even though President Wilson pushes through the League of Nations and the countries of Europe agree to it, the United States never joins the League of Nations. President Wilson is not allowed to just make decisions on his own in this country. We have three branches of government. Congress, and specifically the Senate, must ratify any peace treaties made by the U.S. with other countries. And the Senate said, no, we don't like this one. And they refused to approve or ratify the Treaty of Versailles. So Wilson loses the battle on this one, and he also becomes very ill from traveling around the country trying to get the U.S. to ratify the Treaty of Versailles. And that's the end of World War I. So make sure you have paused and rewatched this as many times as you need to, and your homework is completed when it's due. Have a great evening.